Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Poddin My Noggin. I'm your host, CK Sims, and today we are joined by author of Running in Slippers, Angie Hawkins. Welcome to the show, Angie.
Thanks, CK. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. And for those who are, watching today, we have another guest here. My puppy is deciding to be loud. Hopefully she'll calm down. So you are an inner glow coach, but that's not where you started, right?
Correct.
So take us back to Angie 20 years ago, say. What was Angie like, and how did we get from there to here?
So 20 years ago would have been 2005, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So I graduated, this is going to show my age, but I really don't care. I graduated college in 2002. So in 2025, I would have been working my second job out of college. And I went to Indiana University, and I was living and working in Indianapolis, Indiana. And this was a time in my life because I grew up, my parents didn't really get out of their comfort zones. They were really risk adverse. So I was conditioned to be the same way. Yet I would see other people doing things and getting out of their comfort zone. So it's like I knew it was possible. I just wasn't sure if it was possible for me. So I had always wanted to live in Chicago because I had this dream of like being lost in a big city. So I ended up moving to Chicago in 2007, which for me at that time was pretty huge. It was a courageous thing to do. I had to look for a job and get a job there. And I thought it was going to be this adventure. And it ended up being a time in my life where it was an adventure in a way. I thought it was going to be a fun adventure. It ended up being an adventure of serious life lessons, which I obviously needed all of those. But one of the things that happened when I was living in Chicago, because I lived there from 2007 to 2018. And in 2017, my boyfriend broke up with me, and then my dad passed away. And up until this point, I had been in this energy of seeking things outside of myself for happiness, which was why the breakup was so devastating, because I was seeking love and happiness with him, and it was like very codependent, and I knew I wasn't happy, but I didn't want to be alone, like one of those kind of situations. And then my dad passing was obviously very devastating. So I went through this soul searching period where I was like, okay, I want to be happier and do better with my life. So I decided to move to Hawaii, which the intention was good to make myself happy and be a better person, but I was still reaching for things outside of myself. And so I got to Hawaii, and it just wasn't the dream that I had expected. For example, I moved here and I had kept my job, and this was in 2018, which was way before remote work was the trendy thing to do. But I had kept my job and I was working remote. But at the same time, there was a huge management shakeup. And for the first year that I lived here, I was in constant fear of losing my job. I had a really hard time making friends when I first moved here. I bought a condo right away to prove that I was all in and committed to the move. My brand new condo flooded about a month after I bought it because a shared pipe in the building backflowed into my bathroom when I wasn't home. So my entire condo flooded. There's a whole string of events. Like my grandma died. So for like 2.5 years after living here, it was just one thing after another. And I was still in this mindset of reaching for things outside of myself. And all of these things outside of myself were basically just falling apart. And then COVID happened, which was so restrictive and isolating. So that wasn't great for my mental health. However, COVID was how I learned how to surf because everything was closed except the state didn't have jurisdiction over the ocean. So the ocean was open. And so I had taken a surfing lesson the summer before and I was confident, even though with businesses being closed, I was like, okay, I'm sure he'll give me lessons, on the down low during COVID. And he did. And then that relationship turned romantic and it ended up being based on a lie and he betrayed me. And I had just reached a point because again, this was like 3 years of life just handing me shit. And I thought things were finally getting better and then they weren't. And I could not take it anymore. So I intentionally overdosed on my anxiety medication because I just didn't even want to be alive anymore. But surviving that is how I started on my growth journey in earnest. And long story short, that's how I ended up where I am now.
Well, long story short, but there's so many things to unpack in there, right? Like if you think about it, like one of the things, the themes that you're talking about resonates a lot with me with trying to find external validation and happiness as if it lives outside of us, and what that hunt does to a person, right? Because it usually stems from having some sort of disruptive childhood or where your
Yeah.
voice wasn't sort of heard as a childhood, that sort of thing. So like that resonates with me. And what's like, I lived that life for 35 years, right? And then in 2017, which is a correlation here,
Oh, interesting.
I
Yeah.
had my event with trying to take my life, which I also failed, thank God. And then things started to shift because I put the work in, like
Yes.
just something completely different than I've ever tried before. And I can honestly say, for the most part now, I think when you live a life of seeking validation outside, externally, or seeking happiness externally, even when you heal, there's still some of it, like some residue that's left behind where there's still
Yes.
that like yearn for it. But I could say that, and we're going to talk about this now, is that until you get a taste of finding internal validation, like you've never experienced anything like it, really. Like it's just because it's not based on somebody else, right?
Yeah. And that's what's so powerful about it, though, and why you can kind of get a high off of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just so you Chicago sounds fun. I've never been, but I'm going to
Oh,
wait a few years
it's
because I
great.
want to go. But and Hawaii, which is one thing that also resonates, is one of my like bucket list places to go and spend some time, and like actually get like to meet the locals, and which I know they're not usually super friendly towards people from outside, but I want to
Correct.
understand their Hawaii, right? Like that's how I look at it. It's what is your Hawaii? Show me your culture and that sort of thing. But yeah, I just to be on the beach and that sort of thing. But to go to Hawaii on your own and then have a flood take out your condo, essentially, like
Yeah.
what even happens in that situation? Like,
I had a total, well, it's funny because it wasn't funny. The weekend before the flood, I flew to LA to go to this healing intensive. It was like this 3-day healing intensive. And I don't know if you've ever gone to any kind of conference or seminar or whatever, but you come home and you like think you're going to change the world. So I'm like riding on the high of this healing seminar, like, yeah, I like cured all my inner child issues because that was the whole theme. Like we had to find our deepest wound, which mine was the belief that I didn't deserve to be loved. So I was like, yeah, I deserve to be loved and I'm going to like charge through life like this now. And that same week, my condo flooded and I had a total emotional breakdown. I remember, so island time is real, because I'm from Chicago, where people are very efficient. Like if you call an emergency plumber, they will be there within 15 minutes. This is not Chicago. Like I was calling all the emergency plumbers I could. They were like, "Oh yeah, we'll be there tomorrow." Blah blah blah. And I was like, no, that doesn't work for me. So I finally called this plumber. She was like, yeah, we can send someone out right away. I just need to get some information from you. She was asking like every little thing. And I lost it. I totally went off on her. I was like, all you need is my fucking address. Blah, blah. Like I just went off the rails, and she like almost hung off on me. And I was like, okay, I need to calm down because this is the only person available to come right now. And then I had an emotional breakdown on the floor because our building manager, he was like across the island. So he was like, yeah, I can be there in like an hour to get the dry vac or whatever. And I'm like, it's flooded right now. It's ruining my stuff. And I had just moved here. So I didn't have any like, because now I have a collection of like older scrappy towels. At that time, I had the bare minimum. So I had I had like 2 bath towels that I was like actively using, and I had to use those to clean up the flood, and it wasn't even enough. So yeah, I had a total emotional breakdown. It was bad.
I mean, like, that sounds completely reasonable to me.
Thank
You know,
you.
to me, I'm putting myself in the same situation, right? Just bought a condo. I'm in a brand new place, which is very isolating on its own. Yes, beautiful, absolutely, but like isolating if you've moved there by yourself, and you are back from your retreat where you're feeling super empowered and ready to like take life and just make it your bitch, essentially, and then you have a flood. And so I think to myself, like, I think I too would have had an emotional breakdown, especially if, when you go from, like you said, when you live in an urban area, you call someone and they're there within like 30 minutes, a couple
There's a
hours.
sense of urgency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a sense of urgency, right? And what's interesting is that a few weeks back, I woke up and could smell smoke in the air in my house. But I live in a city, Montreal, so I just assumed there was some street stuff being done somewhere that I could smell. And no, it was actually the socket I'm looking at right directly across from me right now was melting.
Oh my
And
God.
so we called the plumber, not the plumber, the plumber didn't do anything. And they're like, I think they were here within like an hour and a half max, because I said, my first response was I flipped the power to that circuit, so
Hmm.
whatever's happening is off. So like the emergency wasn't emergent, if you will.
But
So
they were still there quickly. Yeah.
we were very quickly, and in that process, they discovered that there was other units melting in the house. So I needed
Oh my God.
complete rework throughout the house. But yeah, so as a single person in a situation like that, who wouldn't break down?
Because
Especially
that
if
would have
you,
been stressful in any situation, let alone, yeah, I was alone, didn't know anybody, brand new, all of the stuff.
and everything piled on top of it as well, right? Like leading
Yeah,
up
because
to,
then stuff kept happening. And
yeah,
so it's like I never really had a chance. Because when shit happens, you need a minute to recover, right?
yeah.
But I just felt like there was that 2.5 year time period. It was just like one thing after another. I had no break. And I consider myself a strong and resilient person, but there's really only so much a human being can handle, you know?
I always call that stacking, right? No, I like it when it's the other way around and you get the stacking of the blessings, if you will. But I
Yeah.
totally understand what you're talking about too. Like to be in that state where it just seems like you can't catch a break, and if the
Yeah.
second you feel like you could take a breath, something happens and weighs down again on top of your already massive load that you're bearing. So that that resonates with me. So you still live in Hawaii now,
Yes.
which jealous. Because I bet it's absolutely beautiful there. But so you went through the pandemic, you made an attempt on your life, which you failed. Thank you for being. I don't know what it was, but you got to stick around to carry out the rest of your story. Um, And then you decided, like, what was that actual turning point? Like, what was the train of thought that brought you to that? I want to say write about this or do something different.
So what happened was, so I overdosed. I took an entire bottle of, I think it's called clonazepam. I feel like I always pronounce it wrong.
Is that correct?
And so I was unconscious in my shower for a day and a half. Somehow I managed to text a friend and she picked me up and took me to the hospital where I spent another day and a half. So I was basically out of commission for 3 days. So when I got out of the hospital, I turned on my phone and some people had been texting me. And one of my friends was especially concerned because I wasn't responding to her text. And I actually was she was having this workshop and I was supposed to be there and I wasn't. So her texts were kind of frantic, like, are you okay? And I didn't want to talk to anybody. So I was like, and keep in mind, so when I got released from the hospital, I was still high as shit.
Of course.
They like should not have released me, but I was in the psych ward and I was basically like begging them to let me go because it was so horrible.
Clonopin alone, even a small dose, has a 30-hour half-life.
Yeah,
So
so and just for anyone listening, these pills are so strong. I would usually take a half pill and it would knock me out for 8 hours. I took 32 entire pills. And so I get out of the hospital, I'm high as shit. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, she's worried about me. I'm just going to call her and play it cool and pretend like something came up or whatever. But not only am I high, I'm also like still in the middle of an emotional breakdown because the issues I was having before did not go away. They were worse. And then on top of that, I was high. But in my mind, somehow I was like, oh, I'm just going to play it cool and call her and pretend like everything's okay. So as you can imagine, that didn't happen. I called her and I like broke down crying. I told her the entire story of what happened. And when I finished the story, I said, I can't believe I didn't die. And her response was, it's not your time. And despite being high as shit, it was so profound that she said that it gave me chills. So I was like, okay, she's right, because I could have died, but I didn't. So there must be a reason that I'm here. And so again, I was high, so I didn't really do much else with that thought, but I knew that I needed help and traditional therapy had never worked for me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to invest the money and hire a coach. So my very first call with my coach, he was like, if you could do anything you wanted and money wasn't an issue, like what would your life look like? And I had an idea for a book. So and keep in mind, let me take a step back. This is like less than a week out from my hospital stint. I was probably still even a little high on this call. And you probably know when you almost die and survive that, life feels very fragile. And my only goal for several weeks, my only goal was just to make it through the day. So I can only imagine how I appeared to him because I'm just basically hanging on for dear life. But he asked me this question and I just thought about the book and I was like telling him, I was like, I have this idea for a book. It's a memoir. And instead of sugarcoating everything that happened in my life, I'm just going to like tell it how it is, like all the messy things that have happened in my life, because I don't feel like we're talking about this stuff because we're hiding behind filters and edits. And I was just going on and on about the book and how I wanted to travel and do speaking events. And when I finished, he was like, did you notice how lit up you just got telling me about it? And I could feel it inside of me. And so I was like, okay, he has a point. So in that moment, I decided, like, I don't know what my purpose is, but this book feels right. So I'm just going to start writing the book because, again, life felt very fragile. So at the very least, I just needed something to give me purpose. So I made a firm decision, like, I'm going to write this book. And that's what happened.
That's amazing. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to talk more about that when we get back.
Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content. aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we've been talking to Angie Hawkins, author of Running in Slippers, about everything that led up to the writing of this book. And there was a lot. And I really loved what you said about how we need to talk about this more without like the filters and the edits, and just sort of be very like brutally honest and outspoken about all of it. I love that. It resonates with me because I'm the same way. Like, we just need to talk about it, and you don't have to sugarcoat anything. Just like when people talk about, one of the things for me is like when people talk about healing, always let them know that healing is the best thing you can ever do in your life. But let me tell you something, it is messy as fuck. And sometimes you're going to feel like worse when you're healing than you did before you even decided to try and start healing. But when you get to the other side and you start seeing glimpses of what life can be like healed, it makes it all worth it. So tell us about the book.
So the book, it covers a 5-year period of my life that was a total train wreck. And I did touch on some of it. My dad died. I moved here. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It just takes you through all of that. And then it does talk a little bit of the aftermath. I am working on a second book that shows you the other side of healing, because I go to in a lot of dark places and running in slippers. And I know that's not for everyone. And I don't get into too much of, because now I feel like I'm thriving. So I just want to show people what it's like. Like, if you've hit rock bottom or you've been in a dark place, healing is possible. I'm not going to sugarcoat it either. It's not easy, especially if you're starting from rock bottom, which is another reason I tell my story, because if you are going down that path, you can stop yourself now. Please don't be like me or you, because it's harder to pull yourself out of rock bottom, but it is possible.
Yeah, exactly. Harder, but not impossible. I would love it. I mean, you have to name your book what you want to name it. I would love it if you name your book, your next one, Lounging in Slippers. Because now you're healed and thriving.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, now you're lounging in slippers.
Pick up my feet.
Yes. So the book gets dark because you talk about your stuff very authentically and that sort of thing. You know, and you said that that's not for everybody, or some people don't like that or that sort of thing. But, you know, that's a part of the problem, right? The greater problem is the discomfort they feel when they think about being in the dark. You had mentioned also you moved to Hawaii and it didn't turn out anything like you thought it would be. And I feel like that's such a on point thing that happens to individuals who live seeking happiness and validation externally. We have this image or expectation of what things are going to be because that's what we need. But rarely does life look that way or turn out that way.
Yeah, just to be clear, I take accountability for that, because I was putting the pressure on that being the thing to make me happy. Whereas if I was already happy and glowing inside of myself, yeah, the flood still would have been stressful. All these other things would have been stressful, but they wouldn't have been so debilitating like they were, because I was so attached to the outcome of living there, being responsible for my happiness.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that sort of transparency and that authenticity where you say, like, that's my accountability. But I think that was mine too for so long.
Yeah.
And there still exists that, right? Like, I live in Montreal now. I was in my healing, the beginning part of my healing journey but the choice to move to Montreal came from, well, I think I need a change of scenery, and I'm going to move to Montreal because that's a city I've never lived in, and that's going to help with the change of scenery. So, but there were expectations, right?
Yeah.
And my first 2 months in Montreal was not very wonderful. They're often glazed over as if they didn't happen, because I rented an apartment that was infested with cockroaches, and I didn't know that
Ooh.
until like after I moved in. And like I'm a clean freak. I get
Oh,
the
me
sun.
too.
And so when cockroaches came around, like I thought my world was going to fall apart. But I didn't. It didn't. I figured it out and got
Yeah.
through it. But I don't like to think about it because it gives me the EBGBs, right? But so now you have the book out, Running in Slippers. And this
Yes.
is available to be purchased online, major bookstores, that sort of thing.
Correct. It's available on paperback and Kindle on Amazon. It's also Audible on Amazon, but the audiobook is available anywhere audiobooks are available.
Is it you who
And it
does
is
the
me. So I
congrats?
want to stress that. Yes.
Yeah, so I love to hear that, because I had a podcast guest not too long ago who he coaches people who write memoirs, on how to do the work from their own voice, as opposed to having somebody else read it for you.
Right.
And I just think that that's fantastic. So you get to, and you have a lovely voice. So
Oh, thank
who
you.
would want to like actually sit and listen to your story?
It was actually good practice for me because I don't know if you run into this. I used to hate hearing the sound of my own voice, but I had to, like, because I recorded the whole thing and you have on the headphones. So you're listening to yourself the whole time. Then after the editor was done, I had to listen to the entire book and then I had to record some portions. So it helped me get used to my own voice.
That was an unsuspected or unexpected, if you will, healing process of doing this podcast. Because I would go back and I would watch to edit, and I'd see myself and I'd hear myself, and I would cringe. Full body experience. It was like, I kept just saying to myself, like, why am I so gay? I'm like, why am I so gay? Oh my God. And it was just this very cringy thing. And then over time, I realized, like, this is who I am. I can't change that.
Oh, yeah. I think we both had an experience of like practicing self compassion and self love.
Yes, which is such, it's, you need that to heal, to like
Yes.
heal, especially in those messy periods. So you wrote the book. And then you started your coaching business, which I want to say
It's inner glow coaching.
inner glow coaching, right? And shine from the inside coaching is another way of saying it. So what is that? So like, tell me about who's your target audience and um, what that looks like.
So basically, Shine from the Inside coaching, it helps women transform from people pleasing and seeking external validation for happiness and transforms them into inner confidence and happiness. Because as you as I know, that's where the true magic happens.
hmm Absolutely. And I love that it's female centered, because you see a lot of that, right? I'm sure that
A
there's,
lot of women do that. Yeah.
I'm sure that there's men that go through the same thing as well, but men require different levels of therapy and coaching because of how they compartmentalize their emotions and feelings and all that.
Agree. I'm not opposed to coaching men, but I think if a man came to me, I know a male coach and I would probably refer them to him because I think they would get better guidance through him.
And that's totally fair. So let's just say one of the things that, I wanted to come back to was when you hooked up with that coach the first time, um, and he asked you, like, if money wasn't an object, what would your life look like? And that's such a powerful question, right? Because it
Yeah.
helps us tap into what we would find the most fulfilling, if you will.
Yeah, and I also use that question in my coaching because the whole shine from the inside concept, it's because I think, and you will probably relate to this too, I feel like a lot of self-help stuff is geared toward fixing yourself or doing something to be better. But we're all born with this light inside of us. Like you see little kids, they're running around, their clothes don't match, like they don't care what other people think of them. But as we go about life, society or our family or whoever starts dimming our light, and then we start acting in a certain way with our lights dim to please society or whatever else outside of us. So the whole shine from the inside concept is to like light yourself up and then inspire people around you to be the light for other people. Like it's this exponential effect. But yeah, I feel like we get so disconnected from the things that lit us up from when we were little. So for example, I used to love writing when I was little. And so that was another reason why the writing the book lit me up so much, because it's like I just wanted to write. Like the concept as well lit me up, but it's like I wanted to write. So we get disconnected from the things that really help us shine and be ourselves.
I love that part, about it's not about fixing. Because to fix something, one has to then believe that they're broken,
Exactly.
right? And what if you're not broken, but you just don't know how to live with who you are,
Yes. We just
right?
forgot how to be ourselves. And that's just it. You just have to be yourself. You don't even have to do anything to be worthy or be lovable. You just
Absolutely.
be yourself.
I love that. And I think that it's powerful because in my experience, it was my biggest change had to be reprogramming my inner dialogue,
Same.
right? Like, because my inner dialogue was a dumpster fire, and
Same.
it was brutal. But so that took practice and showing up for myself. But what the real magic is exactly what you're talking about. Is I wasn't trying to fix myself. My inner dialogue was just feedback I had heard throughout life, societal subscriptions that I had unconsciously subscribed to that really
Hmm.
weren't my truth, and me trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Like it wasn't ever going to work that way. And I love the idea of inner glow coaching because you're not trying to fix something. You're trying to teach someone like the number one principle of being kind to yourself,
Yes.
right? And that's such a concept that people don't get. If you're not kind to yourself, then you're only being nice to others.
Yeah. I used to self abandon all of the time and I was miserable and I didn't understand why. And now I totally understand.
Yet you have to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
It's so important. But that's also another societal subscription, right? Like that selflessness, um, full servitude. Servitude is great. Helping others is one of the most fulfilling things that you'll ever get to do, but not at the expense of who you are and your whole being, right? And I love, so
Yeah. Cause
I had a therapist once. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off.
no,
Um,
it's okay.
I had a therapist once, and my background is in mental health and clinical psychology. So, and I love therapy. I will go to therapy regularly because I love just tune ups. Like cars get tune ups, my brain needs a
Oh,
tune up.
yeah.
I need an hour of that objective, like thought guidance, and then I'm good to go. My One of the things I taught this particular therapist when she was my therapist was that she would often say, "Fill your cup," right? So that you can, if your cup's not full, you can't give to someone else. And I'm like, I would like argue with that. And she was like, "Why?" I'm like, "Okay, what would you say?" I said, "I would say you have to imagine yourself as a cup, a teacup, and a saucer. And when your teacup is full, it's going to overflow into your saucer. And when you have the tea or the fulfillment in your saucer, that is what you can give away. because then you are not
Oh,
obligated less than to give to.
I love that because I always use the yeah, what's the other phrase? I can't even think of it now because that was so profound and mind-blowing what you just said
Yeah.
about the saucer. Oh,
Yeah.
don't give from an empty cup or
Yes, but see, your cup is like you are the cup. So if
yeah,
you're
but I
not
love yours so
whole,
much better. I don't even need to remember the other one now. I'm like, I can't remember it. I use it all the time and I can't remember it. I love the
um,
saucer though. That's such a better analogy
well,
because
because
that's the
and
point
like
of the saucer.
it's that's what you can give from. And if you're always filling over, you're not wasting anything. It just goes in the saucer, and you can give from that freely. People can take from that freely. I apologize to listeners about my puppy.
Oh
She's
no, I
doing
don't mind at all. I love
this.
dogs.
I know I love her too. She's like, "Oh, you're on a call. Let's squeak things and make noise." Um, so how does someone come to get to have a conversation with Angie about inner glow therapy,
So
coaching?
yes, so there's a application on my website, and then from there I'll schedule a call.
Okay, so that's running.
It's runninginslippers.com. So running in slippers, I call that my brand. It's the name of my book, but it's also my brand. I explain in the introduction of the book what running in slippers means or why I titled the book that way. But basically, running in slippers is a metaphor for life. And also, by the way, in case this is a confusing, in Hawaii, slippers are called, or flip flops are called slippers. So it basically means running in flip flops. And it's a metaphor for life because if you run in flip flops, that can be fun and playful and adventurous, but it can also be scary, painful, and dangerous. So it's a metaphor for life. So I still consider that my brand and but my shine from the inside coaching is also on that website runninginslippers.com.
I love the concept of the name actually, because some of the most awful falls and tumbles I've ever had have been in flip flops. And as a
Really?
44-year-old, I have a rule that if I'm moving anything, right, to help someone or whatever, I do it in sneakers and not flip flops. Because flip flops, they are great. Toes are in the air. Everything's fresh, but not great for doing manual work. So they can book on runninginslippers.com/coaching. You can also get like meet Angie. You can see the book. You can see press that you've done and events. What's next for you? I know we talked about a second book, so that's in the works right now.
Yes, a second book is in the works. I'm also hoping to do more speaking events, whether they be because up to date, I've only done local events and living in Hawaii, that's like very isolated. So I hope to reach more people either virtually or in person. So I am trying to expand in that way as well. And also, I want to mention I do offer free calls for new clients.
Yes, I think I saw that actually.
Yeah.
You'll schedule a free
So we
consult.
can work because my goal is to help people because and that's why I have an application on my website. I don't just let people book calls because my coaching may not be for everyone. But if Shine for the Inside coaching isn't for you, I know other coaches or I have other resources that I can point you in. So I'm happy to help in however I can, even if it's not directly through my coaching.
I love this. So, like, right off the cuff, everybody, I'm just going to call this out. I like to call a spade a spade. This woman is honest and mindful. And, like, you know what I mean? Like, there are lots
Yeah,
of coaches out there.
I
Let's
know.
be real, there's
They'll take
lots.
anyone.
And it's one of those things that you have to be like, what is it they're selling? And I feel like somebody can understand that they have an intrinsic value to add to a person's life when they know it's not for everyone,
Yeah,
right?
and that's why I was saying before, like, I think I could help a man, but I know a coach who could definitely help a man, so I would much rather refer them to him and get them the help they need than me fumbling through it and not really knowing what I'm doing.
See, and I love that because it just shows accountability and that you actually care about and you have integrity, right? These are
Yeah.
like really big pillars for someone who is going to be helping individuals navigate certain life choices or changes. So I think that that's great. I love that. So automatically 5 stars for Angie Hawkins coaching. So you've got the book in works. You're looking at expanding your speaking engagements. And so, like now, if someone were to ask you, remove everything like money, all of that sort of thing, and what would that look like for you now? Would the question change at all? Would the answer change? Sorry.
No, it would still be the same. I would still write the book. And actually, if money wasn't an issue, I would go all in on traveling and doing speaking engagements because I have a whole bucket list of places I want to travel. So I would somehow secure speaking engagements there or secure a speaking engagement nearby so I can still hit that place. But I would just do a world tour speaking and meeting people because my end goal with running in slippers, and this is what I was telling my coach, I want to go around the world and have like basically these speaking engagements would be safe spaces because again the whole book is to be unfiltered. Like I don't care what your Instagram looks like with all the filters and edits, this is a place to actually talk about real life. So these speaking engagements would be a safe place for people to have those kind of conversations, and I'm there to initiate it, but I don't necessarily need to stay in that location and keep it going long term. It's just to bring these like-minded people together and they can continue that community forever and ever as long as they want to. So it's basically like to have this global community of love tribes that's a safe space to be yourself.
I
That's
think
my
you're
end
gonna have that.
goal. What?
I think you're gonna have that.
I hope so.
I think because I think you lit up again, right?
Yeah,
So
see.
right. And I think that it may not look like private jets and whatever to get places, but or 5-star hotels all the time. But I
Yeah.
feel like that aspiration's going to come to you and it's going to happen. I feel like you're already on your path to making that for yourself. So
I do too. Like I feel it in my soul. So I don't know when, I don't know where, but it will happen.
and this is a really interesting thing too. Being mindful of time, but my if I were to be asked that question, because I thought about it when you brought it up, and I
Yeah.
was like, if money wasn't an issue,
Let's hear
what
your
would I
answer.
do? So money wasn't an issue. I would do this 5 days a week, and I would have a full-time podcast, and I would get to connect with wonderful people like yourself who tell their stories and grow the show and reach people and change lives and all of those things. So, and what's interesting to me is that, um, as you said, in my soul, like in here, I know it's going to happen, but I don't know when. And I'm not one of those super patient people. Having a
Same.
puppy taught me about patience. And this is the second season of we've recorded 87. This is our 89th, I believe, our 89th episode that we've recorded. I've recorded. And so like we're getting close to that 100 mark, which is like a little mini celebration as well. So that's the thing. It's when you kind of know what it's like when's this gonna happen?
Oh, I
What am I gonna
know.
do in the universe to like make it happen? So
Because I'm intuitive. I like when you said that, I lit up. So I think it's going to happen for you. I just don't know when.
well, I that's it. So I mean, I that's the other thing, like right, we have to be patient, know that all things are in perfect timing, and whatever happens to us are lessons for us to learn from and grow and be prepared. And I always love the saying, we are living in answered prayers right now, or in
Mm,
blessings that we've asked for, or manifestations that we put into the world. We're living there right now. And like that couldn't be further from, no, that can be closer to the truth. Is what I meant to say, because that is exactly where I am. Because 35-year-old me versus 44-year-old me, very two different people.
Same. Have you read or heard of, and I feel like I always get the title wrong, Parallel Universes of Self?
I have not, but I'm always interested in picking
Okay.
something to read.
It's super deep. I can only read like 10 to 15 pages at a time, and then I have to like marinate in it because it's a lot to think about. So it's hard to describe succinctly. I can't even pronounce it. But basically, it takes the act as if theory to a whole separate level. So basically, the lives that you and I just described, there's a version of us already living that life in a parallel timeline. All we have to do is be that person, not act as if, but actually like step into the energy of who that person is. And then you just naturally merge into that timeline and become that person. And now you're living that life.
I like this. So parallel universes of self.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's super thick and it's taking me forever to get through because it's long and deep, but I highly recommend it.
Universes of self book. Let me see. Is it like a red cover with a checker?
Yep.
Okay. By Frederick Dodson. All right. So first we all got to go out and buy Running in Slippers. That's number one.
Yes. Yes. That's on my first recommendation.
But then the second recommendation then, after you've finished reading Running in Slippers, is to go and pick up Parallel Universes of Self. Let's see if we can all like step into our desired energy.
Even if you're not a reader or don't believe in woo-woo stuff, even the act as if theory, that has worked for me in my life because when I was living in Chicago and wanted to move to Hawaii, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't have the money. I called a realtor in Hawaii and I was like, hey, keep in mind, I had zero plans. I didn't have the money. I called her and I was like, hey, I'm moving to Hawaii at the end of this year. And this is my budget for a condo, which was an amount way above my actual budget. And she was like, okay. And she started sending me listings. By the time I was ready to move to Hawaii, which I thought was going to be like years away, it was later that year, exactly like I said. And at that time, my budget was what I told her my budget was. So I've had so many instances of the acting as if actually working. So even if you just start there, that's a good start. But I highly recommend that book.
Yes, I too have had the same experiences. When you start sort of just not just believing you can, but just assuming you can. Like you are attracting that different energy, that different vibe. Yeah, like I said, 35 to now, completely different person. And it keeps getting better because I keep thinking bigger, and being more confident in that acting as if role.
Same.
Yeah. Well, it has been a thoroughly wonderful treat to talk to you today.
Likewise.
So everybody, head on over to Running in Slippers. I almost said Running in Scissors, but give me a second.
I know, don't confuse it with that.
yeah, runninginslippers.com. You can pick up Running in Slippers, the book by Angie Hawkins there. If you're interested in doing coaching with Angie Hawkins, you can fill out an application form and get on a free consultation call to see if things are going to work out between you, which I love. And then also, if you're interested in having someone who's very well spoken, articulate, great presence, come talk about life and survival and glowing from the inside out type coaching and all of that sort of thing. Angie is absolutely thrilled to travel around the world to speak at your engagements. So you can get in touch the same way at runninginslippers.com. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show, Angie. I wish you nothing but the best. I'll probably attend one of your shows or speaking engagements in the future.
I would love that.
And for everybody at home, until next time, get out there and live your wildest dreams.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.